again. Hey, you little ding dong. It's getting a new friend tomorrow. 2. Trouble times 2. It won't stop following me around. It's kind of funny. Anyway, getting on with it. I gotta get ripping here. Thank you, Steve, for all you do on here, on this channel, for all of us. No problem. You are so welcome. Listening to you today on your synopsis / take on that gentleman who lived in the forest for 9 months, resolving his war issues himself, struck a deep chord within me. While in the military, I would spend months in the African bush. I wouldn't be seen by any humans for a greater part of that time. I was one with the bush, and my missions were to observe and notify. When you're out there and essentially living as one with your environment, your senses become super sharp. I could tell where the South African border was just by picking up the smell of toothpaste. This was a common scent in the air every time I came within about 2 or 3 kilometers of it. More often though, and at greater distances, it would be the smell of tobacco or even deodorant. As you are saying this, I have just realized that it wasn't my role as a sniper / RECCE that made me so observant, but the fact that I had to become one with my surroundings. I remember every time I went back to civilization, I had difficulty adjusting. Everything sounded so loud, everything looked big. Cutlery at home seemed enormous, lol. The smells, the idiotic conversations. But now that you mention this, I realize that when we are in an environment, especially one that could end your very existence in a heartbeat, you really need to get your act together, and very quickly. Otherwise, you will not walk out of there. I really appreciate your narration, and especially your takes on all the subjects you have spoken of. It all comes from the heart. Today's snowflake generation don't feel from the heart. To feel from the heart, you need to feel what it is like to almost die every day. You need to have come very close to dying to appreciate life until you realize that you are insignificant in this great universe. You will remain exactly that, insignificant just like all the rest. Clinging on to anything and everything that seems to make you feel happy. Being happy nowadays, I think, is feeling no threats, no danger, and no real consequences for your actions. I mean, if you get this wrong, you're out of here in a split second, when in nature. People generally don't really value life. People call survival living, and yet when they find themselves in nature without the precious technology, they term this roughing it out, or surviving. It's so funny. Anyway, thank you for your presence, and thank you for being the man you are. As always, my prayers and thoughts are with you and those you hold dear to your heart every passing day. Be safe out there. Jorge, it's either Jorge or George. I'm going to call you George. George, thank you for that note. And I totally get what you're saying, man. Totally agree. Thank you for that message, alright? Incoming Raven. Answers to your email from August 28th and more. Alright. Hey Steve, this is Catherine again. My husband and I really enjoy your reading of my stories on Saturday, August 28th. As always, your reading and comments were amazing. We love listening to you. First off, I sent this long ago, like right after you read my email to you. So I sent this like August 29th, that you have since moved. And I suspect the original is lost in the old PH. So, I'm sending this to you again, but I want to comment about a few things. And yeah, it's long. But you said last night to send them long anyway, and you promised not to bitch. So here you go. I'd also like to address the many positive responses to my share, and many of the HTH friends who shared similar experiences, and some who feel they are ready to share their own, knowing they are not alone. I'd like to address one of your questions about why people wait to share, and I'm certain there are many reasons. Number 1, because there are many who feel insecure, feeling that they will not be accepted, believed, and embraced by their revelations. Number 2, there are many that wait to see and or hear others tell / share their stories to have that connection with others with similar experiences, to know they're not alone. Number 3, because Steve, you do not take liberties with what we write. You don't have a computer program that rewrites what we send you to suit your opinion of how you think the story our stories should be, or what you think it should say. Even those who write and leave out punctuation and such, you do your best to read them. Without your own adaptations, that is respectful. Number 4. Because of you. You, my friend, are the core, the central focus that brings life to our experiences by being the voice in reading our experiences, opinions, and stories. You share our stories and give faith to those who are in need of acceptance and perhaps the strength to step outside the box and share parts of themselves others have ridiculed them for in the past. You're a son of God, and you shine a light for many to see and follow. Thank you so much for those kind words. Appreciate that. I've shared a story or two with a couple of different storytellers in the past. One I still keep in contact with, sorta. But the one I no longer share with takes liberties with what people write, laughs about it, and thinks by doing so the indulgences he takes with what a person shares okay. He also likes to insinuate those folks are not as smart as he is. Yeah, blank blank. I sent him a story before I learned about you and listened to him read my story. I almost didn't recognize it. The other person is a nice lady, but we listen to her more than share. So, let me start off by responding to a few questions and or comments by those who posted comments and or questions to my stories. I currently live in South/Central Missouri. This is the 62nd place I have lived in my 68 years. Holy cow! Yes, I've lived in many states and places and have a wide range of experiences. Good for you. When I lived in the Ocala National Forest, I was a teen. We left when I was 17 and a half, and I lived there for 4 years. We lived in an old log cabin built around a slab of concrete that had cracked into a plus sign, giving us 4 rooms and an attached bathroom. Perhaps I'll share with you all sometime about this quaint cabin with a corrugated roof under a big oak. I will share with you some of the things I learned watching the watchers, as I called them. They sometimes took towels, sheets, and blankets off our clothesline. This really enraged my mom. Once, one of her favorite towels was pilfered off the line. She walked towards the tree line and told them off. It was quite funny, but she was pissed, and they didn't care. It was my habit after coming home from school greeting all the animals that would greet me daily after I came home. After my chores were done, I would wander the forest. I loved getting lost, so to speak, though I never was. Aside from my 4 German Shepherd dogs, and frequently my big gray tomcat Samson would join me, or at least part of my wanderings from time to time. If I went to my special place, my duck Donald would come. No way. Yeah, I said duck. He was a big, white, quackless duck. He was mean. He was a mean little shit. But he loved me, and believe it or not, could put a couple of my dogs to shame in the protection department. LMAO. Yeah, I could share some funny stories about that duck. But while out in my wanderings, I would cluck and make some clucking sounds, and within a few short minutes, my buddies would respond. It was like having my own bodyguards. Hey, I was a teen, it was cool. That is a pissed off kingfisher. Wow. One time I was wandering along the shoreline of the Ocklawaha River. There was natural springs that feed into this river called the Silver Springs River, where a few of the underwater scenes from the Johnny Weissmuller Tarzan movies were filmed. These are some mammoth-sized catfish. There are some mammoth-sized catfish that grow in these rivers and gators. Oh, and yes, I got to meet Johnny. No way! I freaking love that old show. Speaking of gators, this particular day I was walking in the water along the river's edge, looking for a super cool rocks. Coming alongside me from my back right side was a good-sized gator from out of nowhere, and so fast I almost didn't actually see what transpired. But the big guy swooped in with a loud bark, and he made handbags, shoes, and a purse out of that gator. LMAO. Yeah, it could be dangerous out there, and it was great to have them watch my 6. Oh, and don't you think for a minute that he didn't chew my ass out after he was done. It was a bit scary and funny. I have never been a crier. I've always been a tough little shit. As my dad used to say, I can do it myself. At that moment, the big guy was right. There are also some who hate humans, and the ones like his family. He also taught me that they have friends from other clans, which is how they find mates, that is unclean to mate with your own, and that it is unclean to mate with your own offspring. I was also privy to the fact that some clans who are more aggressive than his and other similar clans will take human woman for a mate or to play with, which is why some Sabe look more human than others, and sometimes these women are traded for other things with other clans. He shared with me that he saved his Giga, G-H-I-G-A, his woman. I spelled it as it sounded. He said she was near death and he saved her. He told me that there are human men that hunt them, kill them, and some are taken and never seen again. They are forever vigilant watching, which makes sense when you think about it. He explained to me that they have a way to release a protective cover, which we call a bad smell, much like the skunk. This helps them to secure others away, and to let humans know they are near. Young Sabe likes to scare with it. Think funny. Learning all this and more when I was a teen gave me a greater knowledge growing up than the average person, not to mention the experiences I had with them and all I learned in the forest. Funny thing, I now struggle with the names of trees he taught me. Go figure. The big guy also told me that they hide to live and take what they need. Some don't care what they destroy, and land usually gives them what they need. But, like when they find human-like people like me to give to them what they need, they are galega, happy, again spelled as it sounded. I'd like to talk briefly about that special place I spoke about in the forest, that perfect circle of trees. To the gentleman who mentioned a fairy circle, yes, my family and I have talked about that many times over the years. We also thought about some of the things that happened while we lived out there, that perhaps we had interaction with the fae, considered in some cultures to be fairy people. I have some things that happened out there that do lean towards fae activity, as they like to play tricks with humans, and they got me a couple of times. That is for another share. The portal that I saw was brief, but I saw much. The circle, such as it was up off the ground, not sure how high, but it was big, and there was movement, perhaps circled in a counter-circular motion, and there were flashes of light amid a multicolored swirl of a darker shade of gray. When I saw the mammoth-sized shape, it had the predator kind of look to it, if I had to compare it to something. But back then, that movie had to come out yet, so to me it was like millions of mirrors, shiny and iridescent, but with a well-defined shape. But after he kicked Matthew, and Matthew literally flew in the air at least 5 or so feet away from me, hitting the ground hard with a thud. But when this apparition, a huge being, seemed to exhale some massive energy wave towards Matthew that literally picked him up, causing him to tumble over a few times. I was like, holy cow, what the hell was that? Scared out of his wits, and rightfully so, Matthew attempted a few times to get up, clinching his midriff, and ran. I turned in time to see this being jump into the portal and vanish, portal and all, with a wave of energy that crackled, and I could feel the wave, or movement of energy, rush into the portal as it vanished. In fact, the energy pulled me towards the portal with great force, unnerving to say the least. I lay there for I'm not sure how long afterward. My German shepherds came into the circle then and whimpered while walking around me, and my tomcat Samson came over to me and stepped up onto my belly and sat down facing the area of where the portal had been and began to growl deep inside. I felt it more than I heard it. I then noticed the dogs were close to me, very close. I petted each of them and talked to them, reassuring them and thanked them. I got up to walk back home and noticed as I exited the circle of trees, my hair stood out as if electrified. It was so weird. I must admit, every time I entered that circle after that day, I was always wondering if that portal would appear again, but it did not. Darn it. Tough. Though tough on many occasions, I would feel as if I were not alone. Oh, I think that meant though. On many occasions, I would feel as if I were not alone. For the record, in my early 20s, I briefly worked in law enforcement, learned self-defense, and became even more of a force to be reckoned with. Later on, I went into the medical field. No, I don't have any sheepskin. Instead, I have a PhD in life. I don't think outside the box. I don't need a freaking box. Okay, I guess I'll call this to an end. I hope this answers a few questions. If you have more, feel free to ask me. As I mentioned above, I now live in south central Missouri with beautiful rolling hills, rivers, and lush greenery of the Ozarks. If you have a couple of people who write to you who also live in the Ozarks, feel free to give them my name. As an afterthought, I would add for those interested that I have had other kinds of experiences besides Bigfoot / Sabe, and I have a great story about a Bigfoot that kind of ruined a night on Lover's Lane, lol. Yeah, I have other stories. I can't share them all at once. I love what you're doing with your new place, Steve. I hope you and Sarah are well, with no lingering side effects from your poison mishap. Your babies look happy in their new digs, and I can hardly wait to see your new feathered friends. Oh man, I've hatched my share, and I love your goat. Your new shadow. Laugh my ass off. Hugs all around. Be sweet and God bless. And for the rest of your followers, hang in there. I know Steve is the man, and I might add, Steve, I'm also a logical, no BS kind of lady. I've never taken shit from anyone, and I may be short, 4'10½. But remember, it only takes a drop of nitro to make a point. But I've perfected my tough little shit attitude over my 68 years, and in regards to all those who blindly follow, I'm not nor have been a sheeple. I'm an avowed nonconformist, so the old guy, currently the U.S. POTUS, and his followers, they can kiss my grits. I'm sure if anyone ever stood up to him, he would run to the basement and cry for his cup of pudding. I'm guessing that Obama ass might withhold it from him till he got Biden to cry for him. Also, Catherine is spelled with Catherine, for those that asked. P.S. for the naysayers, kiss my grits. Looking forward to your man cave round table. Holy shit, Catherine. That's quite the frickin' share. And good for you, but not being scared. Chucking shit right back to where it comes from. That's the way everybody's supposed to be, right? Never be scared. Ever. Never ever be scared. For those who want to know more, it sounds like you have enough experiences to write a new line of Encyclopedia Britannicas, right? I want to hear more. I want to hear it all. If you have more information, anything that'll help anybody, Catherine, please send it our way, all right? If you feel you have anything that'll help the people, send it. Okay? And if by any chance, I'll ask this directly to you, have you ever heard of anyone referring to some of these beings as, quote, a tracker? Or the trackers? Have you ever heard of that? If you have, or anybody out there has, email me more about it if you could, please. I'd really appreciate that. Carson Iceberg Wilderness, Markleeville, California. Hello, Heskey. Hello, Steve. I'd like to share a Sabe experience that took place on July 13th, 2014 in the Carson Iceberg Wilderness area of Northern California. The reason for our trip into this area was to follow up on a face-to-face Sabe sighting that took place in the fall of 2013 during a hunting trip. The hunter had a face-to-face experience with the Sabe. Their hunting party had gone in on horseback in 2013, but in reality they were hunting a mountain range just 2 ridges over from our 2014 camp. The hunter described the Sabe as very tall, built like a basketball player, and covered in dark 4 to 6 inch long hair, only exposed skin on the face and hands. He described the hands as similar to human, but much longer in the palm. The hand and fingers curled in almost to a C shape. He described the face as having very sunken eye sockets, with a very pronounced brow and wide flat nose. He stated it was very human-like. He said he did not ever feel threatened by it. He stated they locked eyes on each other about 150 yards apart in an open, fairly steep slope. The Sabe was on the high ground above him, looking down at him, what he estimated about 3 or 4 seconds. The Sabe then turned and bound up the hill as fast as any deer. The hunter said the movement, speed, and strength were unhuman, covering this ground uphill. Just prior to his visual encounter, he explained the feeling of being watched. He dismissed the feeling, thinking he was walking across another hunter's field of view or tree stand. He felt as though he was messing up someone else's hunt. Several odd tree blinds and structures were observed as he progressed along the game trails, but nothing like he had ever seen by another hunter. These structures were made out of interwoven trees and branches within the timber itself, resembling somewhat of a crude blind overlooking an open meadow. Later in camp, he asked what the others in his party thought of the TV show Finding Bigfoot, and they all started laughing and joking about the show. Right? What did I say about how they did such a great job at discrediting the topic? It's perfect. The government must just love their asses for that, right? That was enough for him. He did not speak of what he saw that day and kept it to himself. That evening all was quiet until everyone was in their tents. Lights were out. This hunter, still sleeplessly awake, heard breaking branches off from the tree line, and several trees were pushed over, crashing to the ground. Nobody else in the camp were awake during the night to hear the commotion, but the hunter was now in the club of no return. He later contacted a research group to tell his story, which is how my cousin found out about the incident and the area. In the summer of 2014, we decided to go into the same area, about halfway as far, but just south of the mountain they were hunting. Setting up camp, they were made quite a bit of noise that night, letting anything within a mile know of our camp. The next morning, we checked the trails, creek bottom, and sandbars for any animal tracks or things that stood out. Then we had some lunch. For some reason that I can't explain, I kept feeling drawn to the dark timber on the far side of the creek, heading upslope of the southern ridge. We decided to find a game trail and look for a source of water and follow that uphill. We found a pristine side stream coming down the mountain and followed that onto several rock benches, working our way up each bench to the next flat section and resting and listening as we progressed up the mountain. After about the third bench, my cousin and his daughter decided to wait there. We weren't seeing anything and lost track of the water source. I decided to hike up to the next bench, and that area opened up into a small meadow area, and the stream was running to the left again with plenty of shade and places to rest. I walked over to the ledge of the bench and motioned for my cousins to come up to where I was. Once they were up to my location, we all sat next to the stream and began filtering water and filling canteens. My cousin's daughter decided she was going to walk up the meadow to a granite outcrop at the top and check it out. After about 10 minutes or so, our canteen's full. I decided to go check on her. We could see her up in the granite boulders about 150 yards up, looking down into a small passage. As I made my way up the meadow, I noticed some odd ground excavations at the base of an old-growth sugar pine that almost reminded me of a feral pig sign. Something was rooting around for food. As I approached, she came over to the granite ledge above me and told me she found some tracks just up the trail from where I was standing. Guiding me up the trail between the granite outcrops, she pointed out the trackway. Huge 5-inch wide heel and 7-inch wide midfoot impressions in the trail duff, made up of mostly pine needles and forest fodder. Excuse me. These impressions were an inch deep and had no leaf or twig litter inside them. They appeared fresh. No significant bare foot or toe definition. You could tell where the front of the foot had pushed off. Whatever made this print was really heavy. I went back down the trail to get my cousin, whom was still waiting down at the stream bank on the far end of the meadow. He came up the hill to join us. With my hiking boots and all 200 pounds of me trying as hard as I could, I was barely able to make a mark, much less an actual impression on the trail. It was just too spongy with pine needles and forest fodder. We measured heel to around 70-inch stride. Whatever it was, it was bipedal and really moving. Typical Sabe gait with right and left prints in line, almost like walking on a tightrope, not staggered like a human or even a bear. What impressed me even more was that full stride, the big guy never stepped foot on one stick or a branch on that trail. Every print was placed precisely, missing every one. It was like he was moving away in silent mode, not making a noise or giving himself away. It seemed intentional, and I saw it. We followed the trackway up through this funnel point with granite rock on both sides and a very large fallen sugar pine tree across the trail. The only way past it was to climb over or go under. This big guy clearly went under and kept going. As we followed his sign, it was nice of him to leave us some reddish-brown hair on the underside bark of this tree. Gathering that, we carried on up the trail. At the end of the open trail, it then cut straight up the mountain to our left, which is where the big guy clearly chose his route. The trail then became overgrown with thick brush and berry bushes. He went through them like nothing. Back at the cut up the hill, we noticed another much smaller stream with a dense grove of small trees and brush on the far side, with the main trail clearly heading into this thicket. The stream was small enough to step across. As we made our way through the undergrowth and the small trees, we came into a canopied, well-shaded clearing. It became immediately apparent this area was different. It smelled horrible, almost like a cross between old urine, pig pen, and septic tank all rolled together. There was old feces all over the ground and huge prints everywhere in every direction. We found a clear set of heel prints and a massive pile of feces between them. It was very dark in color and smelled horrible. It contained partially masticated watercress plant material resembling that of the steamed plant matter we saw earlier, of the stream plant matter we saw earlier. From the content, whatever made this was omnivorous. Could have been a bear, but it was larger than any bear scat pile I've ever typically come across on trails. Aside from a week's old bear scat pile, we had not seen any fresh bear sign or predator scat all day on that mountain. In fact, we hadn't seen any fresh sign anywhere that day, almost like the area was void of predators for some reason. We collected a scat sample and photographed what we could. As we were preparing to head back down to camp, it became clear to us that we found a special place here. The place was occupied for some time by several individuals, if not a family of Sabe. It had structure and purpose. It had a really good source of water, good source of food and cover. It apparently had a bathroom area. This wasn't just a sleeping spot. They inhabited this area for some time before moving on. In hindsight, I think we may have attracted the attention of an adolescent male, maybe simply watching over the area. Out of sheer curiosity, he came over to see whom was making all the noise in the neighborhood. I think we may have surprised him on that mountainside, and he took off from within that meadow. Finding this place, seeing how they forage and how they seem to have structure and purpose. Even human campers in the backcountry will set up simple structure, will return to a similar, somewhat private place in the brush to defecate just like the Sabe. Like most humans, they certainly don't seem to pollute the same place where they forage for food or drink. This is what I observed that day. The Sabe are just that, people trying to live. By this time, we were losing daylight fast, and it was time to return to our camp. That night, we were excited over what we had found, the things we had seen and collected up there. Too excited to sleep. I turned in around 11 p.m. or so. I was laying in my tent, playing some solitaire on my iPhone, when I heard what sounded like footsteps on gravel coming down the trail toward our campsite. It was pitch black out, and this trailhead was technical to travel in the daylight, but there was no headlamp, no light source, nothing. I listened as the human-like footfall walked just left of my tent and then past my cousin's tent. Then the steps had stopped, turned, and came back towards my tent. That's when it hit me. Overwhelming fear. I was so freaked out, I unsheathed my knife and held it close to my chest, just listening, thinking, if this guy grabs my tent with me in it, I'm cutting my way out of here to face it. The footsteps left trail, moving into a small clearing just adjacent to my tent. I could hear what sounded like kneeling or sitting. There was a downed tree in that clearing I suspect was used as cover. A few minutes passed, the feeling of dread subsided. Then, hearing a small animal rustling around in the leaf fodder next to my tent, I concluded a 700-pound predator or night vision wearing psycho was no longer lingering close by. As you said many times, Steve, successful predators don't make themselves known, human or Sabe. I was meant to hear him and to feel his dread. He wanted us to leave. I fell asleep, awakened again around 1:30 a.m. I immediately wondered, had I missed anything? About a minute or two later, I heard a decent-sized tree snap at its base and get pushed over just upstream on the far side of the creek. I thought, well, that's interesting. The hunter from last year reported similar behavior in their camp. I didn't hear anything more falling back asleep till morning. My cousin, however, never heard the first footsteps at 11:30, but did hear footsteps near camp around 3:30 a.m. He heard the same bipedal foot fall down the trail as I did, but also heard, "Hey," vocalized. To this day, he's not sure if it was in his head or from outside his tent, but it was loud and clear, he said. He honestly thought it was me up and walking around outside. I told him I'd never left my tent at all that night. Then I shared what I'd heard, and we figured the big guy paid us a visit or two that night. We left the next morning. No value in mentioning any names. We sent our samples off to a PhD research scientist out of Washington State, who then said he sent them off to a well-known DNA researcher in England, where they later vanished. What a bunch of pricks. What a bunch of pricks. Just kick those guys right in the sack. Are you surprised? With what we all know now, I'm not surprised at all. Even though I did not see the big guy, I know what I heard. I know what I saw, and putting all that together along with everyone that shares with you, I only wish I had known then what I know now. Learning and following a channel that is sharing information about Sabe. The Sabe are real. They are here, and the scientists and governments are covering this up. As typical human nature is dictated time and time again. Step 1, refusing to accept it as it really is. Step 2, see if you can militarize it. Step 3, if that doesn't work, just make it go away. Stick it on a reservation and forget about it. My grandmother and father were both reservation born, as were all our family before them post-government removal. I'm the first generation not born of the reservation, but I'm still a citizen of the nation and fully believe in these First Nations people that have no quantifiable reason to mislead anyone. I love the First Nation encounters, and I hold every story told by the people in my heart. They are not influenced by fear, they are driven by respect and peace with the Sabe. MVDO, pronounced Mudo, or thank you. Steve, and may God bless your new home. Please do not share my full name or email, as it's my work account and I'm working, blah, 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 gotcha. Thank you so much for that share. Absolutely appreciate it. Glad everybody was safe for that experience. And who gives a shit about the hair? You know, really. Today, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's what matters most to me, I've said it before. Who's lying? Why are they lying? Why are we not being taught the truth? Why? I'm pretty sure I'm getting very, very close to that myself. But we still need to hear everybody, right? We still need to hear from everybody. Look at this goat. It's like, oh wow, chest scratch. That feels really good. Please don't stop. Anyway, if you can send us more when you can. If you have more information or knowledge, it'll help people. Or if you knew anybody that needs help, get it to us, all right? And I'll get it to everybody through me here. Get it to somebody. Everybody needs to be heard. Hey, goofy little thing. Look, see that? Boom. It's exactly where I wanted to go. Oh, maybe not. Okay, get out of here. Goofy thing.